In this CineGuru tutorial, we're going to take a look at Cine-trigger entities. So far, we've mostly used Cine-trigger zones, and they work pretty much like any other zone in CineGuru. They're location based, so when the player enters this area, and of course you can change the shape and size of this area by moving these points around. When the player enters this area, the script that this zone has been assigned will trigger, and that's how we've been activating cameras and actors and credits and stuff like that. But we did also include a second way of doing that, and that is this, the Cine-trigger entity. And these are basically based on the player's actions rather than their location. So in some ways they're more versatile. So I'm going to show you a few examples of how these can be used in practice. This is a little example map I made earlier. And we'll start by looking at cameras. So let's assume that you're in a level where there is a door, a locked door, and the player will run off to another part of the level, and let's say they find a switch somewhere, like this one on the wall. And it's going to open that door, but they can't see that it opens that door, and you want to reveal that information to the player. Well, you can use a Cine-trigger entity to do just that. So let's take a look at the Cine-trigger entity itself. So it's got the same naming convention as a Cine-trigger zone. So you start by specifying what type of trigger it is. So it can be one of 4 words: camera, actor, both, or credits. And in this case, we're using camera. So it's going to trigger a camera, and the camera it's going to trigger is a camera called door cam. So the full name of this entity is camera, door cam. That's important. We'll come back to that in a second. And here is our camera. This is called door cam. It's a 5-second shot, and there's a slight zoom in on there as well, from 100 field of view to 80. Yeah, when activated, we will be kind of seeing what this camera sees, taking a look at the door opening. Let's take a look at our switch. So the switch is running a pretty basic script. I think this is one that comes with CineGuru, switch main.lua. And in that script, it says that when that entity is activated, activate whatever is in the if used field. So here we've typed in the name of our Cine-trigger entity. So that's obviously camera, door cam. So when that switch is flicked, it's going to activate our Cine-trigger entity, which in turn is going to activate our camera. And the door is also called camera, door cam, because it too needs to be activated by the same switch. So yeah, when that switch is flicked, both of those things will happen, will be activated. The door will be activated, and so will the Cine-trigger entity. So let's take a quick look at that in test game to see what that looks like. So, yep, there's a door, we can't open it. We'll go looking through the map, and suddenly we find a switch, and there we go, showing us that we've opened that door. So, a more complicated example of this is just up ahead. So, remember in Far Cry you had those kind of watchtowers, or whatever they were called, and if you kind of climbed to the top of them and activated a box, you got this like you got this little cinematic that showed you some of the areas you'd unlocked by liberating this watchtower. Well, we can do something similar with CineGuru. So again, we're using a switch because it's nice and easy to understand. Our switch is just running a pretty standard, it's the same script actually, switch main.lua, and it's going to activate any entity that's called camera, tower. And so our Cine-trigger entity is also called camera, tower. So it's going to activate a camera, and the name of the camera it's going to activate is called tower. And obviously if we go over to our camera marker, we've obviously called our camera tower, and we've given it a few properties there. This is a more complicated shot because it's got lots of different nodes, because the camera does a big path. So we've got lots of camera nodes here, and then it kind of zooms off down here, and there's focal points as well, so we're kind of specifying exactly where the camera should look at any given moment. We don't really need to go into how they work. That's not really part of this tutorial. That's covered in other tutorials in this series. But for our purposes, all we need to know is that when we flick that switch, it's going to activate that camera, because we've used a Cine-trigger entity. So I'll quickly jump into test game and show you that. So where are we? Just going to go over here and climb this ladder. This is a great little script made by the community. I think it was made by Graphics. Just allows you to climb up these watchtowers. Okay, so we're going to flick the switch and we get this little cinematic that shows us a few different areas that we've unlocked. And the camera's kind of swooshing around. Some of this camera movement is possibly a little bit jerky. CineGuru does kind of interpolate the path of the camera, but perhaps it could be a little bit smoother in places. But you get the idea. We have created a kind of a basic version of one of those Far Cry watchtowers. So it's not just cameras that you can trigger with Cine-trigger entities. Just like with the Cine-trigger zones, you can also trigger actors as well. So over here we've got an actor that is going to perform an action text that comes with CineGuru. It's the teleport and vanish and switch example. So when activated, he's going to walk to his first mark. I think he's going to say a line of dialogue, teleport to his second mark. And I think if we leave it long enough, he'll actually turn into a soldier and start shooting us. So we might break off before then. But he's activated rather than through a zone, like in the example. This time it's with a switch. So our switch is, again, still running that same switch main.lua script. And it's triggering any entity that's called actor, CineGuru / switch example. And if you've watched any of our tutorials on how you set up actors and action texts, you'll know that the sort of syntax that we're looking for here is the trigger zone or trigger entity has to be set to actor, and then the path to the action text that's going to be triggered. So in this case, within Script Bank, it's in a folder called CineGuru, and the specific file we're looking for is called switchexample.txt. And of course, you don't need to add the .text. So when activated, we're going to start running this we're going to start running this action text. So let's quickly demo that for you. So again, we're using an action to trigger this rather than a zone. So we'll just go over.
In this example,
and there we go.
I'm going to show you how, as an actor, I can walk, teleport,
so he's yep,
and even shoot back.
He's doing it.
And even shoot.
So, and one last thing that we will check out is credits. So we won't go into exactly how the credits marker works, but we'll cover that in a future tutorial. But all you need to know is that credits triggers, or sorry, credit markers, they have to be set up with a unique scene name. A little bit like actors, they need to have a unique name. We've called this one barrel because it's going to be activated by a barrel, but you could call it anything if you want. And our Cine-trigger entity, we've specified that it's going to trigger credits, and the credits that it's going to trigger are the ones called barrel, and then there's a short 2-second delay before they get going. But rather than use a switch, this time I'm going to use another player action, which is going to be destroying something. So this is a barrel. It's running a script that is actually designed to trigger debris. And it basically says when the health of this entity gets to less than 1, it will spawn debris that is named whatever is in the if used field. But we're going to use it in a slightly different way. Instead, it's going to activate our Cine-trigger entity. So credits, barrel, 2000. And make sure that when you change like the delay and stuff on your Cine-trigger entity, you make sure that matches up with what's in the if used command or if used field, because the entity name has to be the same. But basically what that means is we can go along and destroy our barrel, and it will trigger our credits, which will start scrolling up. So I'll just run over to our barrel, and you can imagine if that was an end of game boss, maybe you do want some kind of credits at the end, just kind of scrolling up. Now obviously we haven't put in a kind of a camera movement or anything like that. We haven't kind of set that up, but this might be useful in certain cases. So that's some interesting ways you can use Cine-trigger entities, and I think that combined with the Cine-trigger zone, it's a pretty versatile toolkit. I think this will cover most usage cases. So yeah, hope you have fun setting up your own actions and cinematics and all that good stuff.